Have you ever heard of fog deserts? Because those are the coolest thing. So fog deserts are a kind of specific subtype of desert that gets almost all of its moisture from fog instead of something like rain or snow or other condensation. And it's really cool. So there's a couple famous fog deserts, including the Atacama Desert in South America, as well as the Baja Desert in California. And fog deserts are characterized by this very thick fog that kind of covers a bunch of areas over the entire desert. Now, how they form is also very cool because they're almost always by a large mountain range, so it's like the desert, then the mountains. So the often very hot air from the desert, it moves around, it swirls, it does stuff, but then it mixes with the much colder air coming down from the mountains, and when cold and hot air mix, they do a bunch of different things, and one of those things is heavy condensation, which is what forms the fog. So hot desert air plus cold mountain air mix and you get a ton of fog that contains a lot of moisture that goes down to the ground, and then when there's enough of it, it kind of condenses into water droplets and all that, and that is where almost all of the moisture comes from. I am trying to film a video and you are snoring very loudly. Seba! Seba! Say hi! Seba! Seba! Or don't, okay. Are you a good girl? You were snoring very loudly. Everyone say hi to Saba in the comments. So most of the time, these deserts are very, very dry. It's so dry, in fact, that the Atacama Desert is the driest hot desert in the world. There really is not a lot of moisture. So you need to, if you live in this desert, adapt to get as much moisture as you physically can from this fog. And that has led to some very interesting adaptations in the things that live there. A bunch of plants evolve really, really large pores in their leaves and stems to be able to suck as much moisture out of the air when these fogs form as they can. And the animals have very interesting adaptations too. This is the Stenocera beetle, and it is one of the coolest beetles I've learned about recently that has one of the coolest adaptations to deal with the lack of moisture. So these types of beetles are found in the Namib Desert in Africa, another very dry desert, another fog desert. So it gets barely any precipitation per year, so they have to take advantage with as much of it as they can. So they have these very, very rough carapaces, so that's the kind of outer coating. They have it, it's very, very rough with lots of ridges and bumps, and what that does is it helps trap moisture from the fog. So they go out in the early mornings when the fogs are at their strongest, and they just kind of scuttle around doing their bug business, and as they're out, the fog kind of attaches itself to the ridges on its outer shell, and it collects as kind of dewdrops. You know how dewdrops form on grass and on spiderwebs and stuff? It does the same thing, but on top of this bug. So, as the bug goes about its business, all of the water that it's going to need for the day will collect on its shell, and then it can use it up later, or at least until it evaporates off of it, because it does get hot enough in the desert for it to evaporate. So it kind of collects and drinks as much water as it can while taking advantage of this fog, which is very cool. And the people that live in these very dry deserts too, they also don't usually have a ton of access to water, which you need water to survive. So they have developed some very, very cool technologies to be able to harvest as much water as they can from these fogs. And this sounds like something straight out of sci-fi, like Dune or something. Like, these people are kind of called fog harvesters, which is the coolest job title, like, ever. And that's basically what they do. They set up these, like, metal mesh things. They take inspiration from animal adaptations like that beetle I just showed, and they use these kind of fine metal mesh net things to condense as much water as they can from the fog and collect it to use later, which is very smart. I don't know how to figure. Like, that is very smart and very good engineering to be able to take advantage of these fogs to get as much water as you can out of it. And it's a very cool technology, and honestly, sometimes reality is cooler than sci-fi stuff because that is so amazing. Like that is the coolest thing. My mind is blown by this. So fog deserts are a very, very cool natural phenomena that leads to even more cool animal and plant adaptations and very cool technology used by the people who live in these areas to get the most water out of a very limited resource, and I think that is just the coolest thing.